Way back in 1961, Robert F. Kennedy spoke about how important it was for people, ordinary people, people like us, people like those folks he was speaking to in America back in 1961, how important it was for people to speak out when they knew that things were wrong. He spoke out in that way because he wanted everybody to take the responsibility for making a difference. That is what we are doing today. We are here to make a difference because we know that a great deal is going wrong. And to be specific, things are going wrong in the courts of Ireland. Things are going so wrong in the courts of Ireland that the reputational integrity of the courts of Ireland is being trashed on the world stage. Why? Because, for example, people are having their homes unlawfully repossessed. People are being thrown out onto the streets. Families are breaking up. Well-being and security is being shattered because the courts are getting it wrong. We even have hard evidence, ladies and gentlemen, of fraudulent misrepresentation in the courts, where banks and vulture funds, for example, are using documentation that has been concocted to basically peddle a false narrative. And the consequences of all this are that people are being harmed on an epic scale. There is one mistake that we can all make. One big mistake that we can all make. A mistake that is being made so frequently by so many people, but a mistake that we must not make. And that is the mistake to underestimate our own power as the people. We, the people, are in power. Ireland is a parliamentary democracy. That means we have a right to influence what happens. Our parliamentary is not functioning successfully because it's failing to provide the level of accountability and scrutiny of the courts. That's why we're taking to the streets to protest about the situation. But there are three things that we must do to harness the power that we, the people, have. Number one, we must strategize. Number two, we must organize. And number three, we must mobilize. And that is what we are doing today. Ladies and gentlemen, we must not allow ourselves to fall into the trap of thinking that we are weak. We are not weak. We are strong. What are we? We're here today because we want what? Justice. What do we want? Justice. Do we want it next week? No. Do we want it next month? No. When do we want it? No. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? No. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? No. We are not going to tolerate fraudulent misrepresentation in the courts. We are not going to tolerate vulture funds pecking on the carcasses of Irish people the way that they have been doing for years. Enough is enough, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we're here today. The issues we are drawing to your attention aren't just about the failure of the courts in relation to vulture funds and banks. In a moment, you're going to be hearing from Anna and Michelle talking about the travesties of justice and the miscarriages of justice taking place in the Irish courts, in the Irish family courts. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, let's not make the mistake of underestimating what we collectively can do. And if I can remind everybody of those wonderful words from Margaret Mead. those wonderful words from Margaret Mead that speak so clearly to why we are here today. She said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." We're making something today. We are making a spark that we will nurture and cherish. And in time, that spark will become a flame, and that flame will become a fire, and that fire will become an inferno. We have the capability of doing this, ladies and gentlemen, because we, the people, have the power. Can I please invite you to applaud yourselves for being here and to applaud the cause that we're all a part of today. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'm going to once again make direct reference to words spoken in May 1961 by Robert F. Kennedy. Japs, if you can just pull the board for me, thank you very much indeed. These words, to my mind, say everything that matters. They encapsulate the entire message about why we're here today. Robert F. Kennedy, forgive me, Robert F. Kennedy, not John F., of course. 1961, Robert F. Kennedy said, "Every time," he didn't say sometimes, every time, whenever you allow a little thing off the hook, it'll come back bigger and worse. The word every is significant in that sentence. He didn't say sometimes. Every time we turn our heads the other way, when we see the law flouted, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong. We know when we know something is wrong. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right. It ain't right. We know that what's happening in the courts is wrong. We know that when families are being turfed out on the street, unlawfully repossessed from their homes through legalistic tacticians at vulture funds and banks, exploiting the opportunity that they've been given by a government that's supporting them, not the people of Ireland. We know it's wrong. We don't have to read it in a book. We don't have to see it on the telly. We can feel it to be wrong. He said, when we tolerate what we know to be wrong, when we close our eyes and our ears to the corrupt because we are too busy or too frightened. In the last 24 hours, ladies and gentlemen, I've had conversations with people who've actually hesitated about being here today, fearful of speaking out, fearful of being seen to be speaking out. In the last 24 hours, I've heard about people who've been harassed in the courts, made to feel weak and humble and not worth the lives that they've got. Every time we close our eyes and ears to the corrupt because we are too busy or too frightened, when we fail to speak up and speak out, we strike a blow against freedom and decency and justice. We all have a different understanding and a different belief about what matters to us. But I don't know about you, but I do know about what I think. I think freedom matters. I think decency matters. I think justice matters. I want justice. I really want justice. It doesn't matter if it's a bully in a playground at a school beating up a little one, or a big vulture fund predating on the carcass of a humble Irish family. It's injustice. I want justice. What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andy Agathangelou, and I'm very, very proud to be speaking with you today about what I think is a phenomenally important report. A report that truly has the potential to make a huge difference moving forward. A report that has the potential to bring justice to the people of Ireland. I like to talk in terms of an idea. A very simple idea, an idea about a chain reaction. I believe wholeheartedly that this meeting today, this meeting this morning in Leinster House, is a very, very important link in this chain reaction. Everybody will have their own version of the chain reaction that we're going to speak about. I'm going to tell you about my chain reaction, the chain reaction that I've been experiencing over the last couple of years. It starts on a Saturday morning. I saw a tweet. I saw a tweet that made reference to two people, names I didn't recognise at all, people that frankly I knew nothing about. Those two people were Edmund Honeyhan, Marshal of the High Court, and Mattie McGrath TD. Two people that were to me complete strangers. But what I saw through that speech compelled me to get interested and to start to take action. The tweet talked about a letter that the Master of the High Court had written. A letter that was completely evidence-based, completely factual. It spoke about how the law in Ireland was being misinterpreted and wrongly applied. It spoke about the consequences of this misinterpretation and wrong application of the law. Consequences that were quite literally causing people to become homeless, and worse. The people of Ireland don't need me, a Brit, to tell you about the suicides that have been caused as a direct consequence of the misapplication of the law that so many of us have become overly familiar with. Not only was Edmund Honeyhan's letter to all the TDs very powerful, but quite frankly, Mattie, your letter that followed expressed in such forthright terms a sense of completely justified outrage and righteous indignation about what has been going on in Ireland. I was gripped by what I read. So much so that within a few days we managed to organise a Zoom meeting for Brits and Irish people to come together to talk about the injustices, the miscarriages of justice, the travesties of justice occurring as a direct consequence of what Edmund and Mattie had been writing about. And that Zoom meeting, which was on the following Wednesday, just a few days after I first saw the tweet, helped me understand that the people of Ireland and the people of the UK were being affected by exactly the same things, the misapplication and the misinterpretation of the law. I came away from that Zoom meeting with an even further sense of motivation that something needs to be done, and one thing led to another, to another, to another. I went with the flow. I went where the energy took me, as have many of you, gone with the flow, gone with the energy. And I found myself in New York at a meeting that involved the Brechon Society, a group of American-Irish lawyers concerned about what was happening over here in Ireland. The keynote speaker was the Master of the High Court, and the Master forensically and technically explained why and how the law was being misinterpreted and misapplied. One thing further led to another, many more links in the chain that followed. We started holding regular monthly Zoom meetings. We started holding weekly Zoom meetings. Yesterday, many of us took to the streets of Dublin to protest about what's been going on. We went to the Four Courts, to Dublin Castle, to the Bank of Ireland at College Green, and then to the gates of Leinster House itself. And we spoke about the idea, as outrageous as it may sound, the idea that there is deliberate misrepresentation going on. Now, depending on your point of view, you might think it's all accidental, or you might not. But what we do know is that the consequences of this are absolutely horrific. In my opinion, the energy, the momentum is building and building. And in this chain reaction, we have today what may well be the most important link in the chain so far, the publication of the McDonald Report. Why is it so significant? Because, like the work of the March of the High Court, as you would expect, it is completely evidence-based and factual. It's balanced, it's intelligent, but it articulates a narrative that none of us can ignore, none of us should ignore, none of us want to ignore, because we're interested in the truth and we're interested in justice. Now, I would challenge anybody reading the McDonald Report to not come to the conclusion that the conclusions and the proposals that it outlines at the back end of the report are, subject to one condition, completely compelling. They are completely compelling, subject to just one condition. And that one condition, ladies and gentlemen, is this: whether the reader has the true interests of the Irish people at heart. Any reader who has the true interests of the Irish people at heart that reads the McDonald Report is going to come to the same conclusions that I have. Something needs to change. And the report gives us some beautiful steers as to how and what those changes could mean. The March for Justice yesterday was energising, motivating, uplifting. There is real hope for change. And without a doubt, the words that are going to be spoken today, the words that have been spoken in the past, the words that are going to be spoken in the future, are going to build a sense of energy and purpose that we can all embrace. One of the speakers at yesterday's march was Terry McMahon, the film producer, director. I mentioned that for a specific reason. I mentioned earlier I'm British. I can tell you that the British establishment has been shocked to the core by the revelations from the wonderful documentary, Alan Bates versus the Post Office. A documentary that articulates a very compelling narrative about human suffering caused by injustice, where weak, innocent people were preyed upon by the big and the powerful. There were two film producer directors involved with our march yesterday. Two. This isn't a threat, it's a prediction. Sooner or later, the full truth about the vulture funds in the UK and in Ireland is going to be out there. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. Too many people have been affected so badly as a consequence of what's been going on for that not to happen. And just like the Post Office versus Alan Bates documentary, the story that's going to be told is going to be a story about valiant heroes and treacherous villains. When reading this report, subject to just one condition, I predict that, in broad terms, one way or another, the recommendations in this report are going to be enacted. The one condition is whether Leinster House, this place, truly has the interests of the Irish people at heart. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is the challenge. I'm very proud and very pleased to be here today to be part of this important conversation. We can all embrace the energy that's created when good people are doing nothing but seeking truth and justice. That's what we're all here today to do. That's why I'm very pleased that Mattie's kindly invited me to come and speak on this very important occasion to discuss the McDonald Report and what it's going to mean for everybody moving forward. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.